Hello and welcome to another edition of our Relationship Secrets Uncovered with this wonderful panel of beautiful, amazing women who have all got experience one way or another within relationships. So before we get started, we're going to be talking about how does feminine and masculine energy affect our relationships. That's probably something you've never really thought about, but we're going to have a good discussion about it right now. So first off, I'm going to introduce ourselves. So I'm Julie Fitzpatrick, founder of Milliside Therapy and Coaching, and I support mainly business owners and professionals, but to really go deep diving into their subconscious mind to uncover and eradicate their limiting beliefs that are holding them back so that they can become unstoppable.
I'm Ksenia Robin. I'm an international matchmaker and coach for dating and relationship, and I help single people around the world to find their big love and rescue them from the bad dating.
And hi, I'm Claire. I am a divorce and relationship coach, and I help people to find clarity out of confusion. If you're in a relationship that's not working, or you're on a divorce journey, which is fairly murky waters, how do you move forward? How do you understand it? And if you understand it, you can make better decisions that you don't regret. And that's what I bring.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ghazala Salim. I'm the founder of Muslim Matrimonial Coach and Love Connections. I look at the educational side of relationships, mainly looking at different strategies, different tools that people can use to understand self-discovery and understand relationships better, mainly for the Muslim community.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anne Helgren. I'm the founder of Anne Helgren Coaching. I'm also the podcast host of the Love You Want podcast. I believe it's really important to go out through life with the kind of person that you want to be with and that you deserve to be with. So what I do for my clients is I help them attract and maintain the right kind of partner for them so they stop wasting their precious time and money with the wrong people.
Amazing. And as we said at the beginning, this is all about how does feminine and masculine energy affect your relationships. So throughout this, if you want to put any comments or ask us any questions, you're more than welcome to do so. So we've recently recorded another interview around first dates, and I started discussing around how feminine and masculine energy can actually impact relationships. Now, most of us aren't really aware of what this is, and to be honest, until I was recently doing some more training, I hadn't really given it an awful lot of thought myself. But actually, and it's nothing to do with being a man or being a woman, by the way, this is all about being at one with ourselves, about making sure that we've got balance. So by having balance, that means we are utilising different elements of our feminine and different elements of our masculine energy so that we can actually be at peace with ourselves. So an example of a masculine energy might be someone who's very much do. I've got to keep going. It's going to be about leadership, taking action, loyalty, firmness, honour and pride. Whereas the more feminine side is more around tapping into your intuition, nurturing, empathy, about being. So when we're looking at ourselves and thinking, why am I always stressed and overwhelmed? Well, maybe you're not looking at you haven't got that balance. Maybe you're not being present. Maybe you're not taking time out for yourself and maybe releasing yourself from that stress and overwhelm. So, Ksenia, what would be your comment around this topic?
I had a really interesting experience. I ran some presentation for women, and everybody expecting I would like to meet a strong man. My next question was, what kind of qualities do you expect from the strong man? And what did I get? Acknowledgement, support, warmth, feeling better, compliments, and so on. And in the end of the day, there are not male qualities, there are female qualities, nurturing, like you said. And a really interesting thing that in their modern society, in modern relationship, women would like to meet strong men, but they expect female qualities. And until they are not aware of it, they will still search for this nurturing and nice and tender and understanding, accepting everything. But these men, they have not enough testosterone. They don't have this man energy, and they will not attract these women.
I think it's really interesting when we talk about masculine and feminine energy. There is very different ways of looking at it, because I think there's the energy and then there's the traits of masculine and feminine. So I know you've mentioned a couple of them, already from both of you. For me, I think how we see masculine, like both men and women have masculine and feminine energy. It just depends on the level of the energy we present and that we have. There's a bit of it, I think, that is hormonal. There's a bit, I think, that is also programming. There's a bit of it that's also choice. And by training, or you actively, consciously choosing to have one trait appear more than others. So, for example, and I think it's also very fleeting. So it's it can be quite a complicated conversation. So when I worked in the corporate world, for example, and I worked with finance clients, those, still is a very male dominant industry. I definitely turned up to the meetings with more male energy, more masculine energy. And I did that to hold the room, to have gravitas in the room. When I left that, I went back to my natural state, which is quite feminine and very far removed from that kind of like dominant energy that I was portraying. So I think we can also choose when we let what energy comes out. And that's what I mean by it's fleeting as well. It's not always something that is fixed within us. But talking about this as well, I think both masculine and feminine energy is needed in a relationship. And it's needed from both the man and the woman. Now, I know there is a various sorts of relationships other than the man and the woman kind of relationship. But and I think we'll just put this out there from this panel, all our relationships are feminine, so women as we are, and with men. So we can only speak for that dynamic, but it is not to intentionally exclude any other form of relationship. So that said, I think that it's important to be aware of how your partner also wants to receive love, receive attention. So, and I'm not saying be fake about your natural stance, right? I mean, I was a bit fake in the corporate world, but I was like, it's at work. It's not like I'm trying to, I wouldn't do that with my own clients, for example, at this stage as a coach. I turn up as who I authentically am. But I did that, bear in mind, I was in my young 20s. I believed I needed to turn up like that to be able to get the job done. And it was encouraged in the corporate world. But what I'm trying to say that in a relationship, because this is what the topic is about, in a relationship, romantic relationship specifically, I think we need both the man and the woman need to have both feminine and masculine energy. I know a lot of people talk about like, oh, they want a very alpha male man, which each to their own. But for me, I also appreciate a man with feminine energy in the sense that, and he's also very affectionate. He's very caring. He's very thoughtful. For me, I identify those very nurturing as well as feminine traits. But I really appreciate that. I am not very much but I also want a man who is a man. I don't want a man who is too feminine either. I don't want a man who feels like, so those are the traits that I appreciate that are deemed as female. But I also love that he's masculine in the way he carries himself, that he's supportive, like he's a provider, he's a caregiver, he wants to protect me, he wants to provide for me, which is, again, masculine energy. And that is so important and so sexy for me as well in my partner. And I love it. But I don't not want this alpha dominant, where it becomes almost toxic male energy. You know what I mean? Think of like Andrew Tate and his, let's not go down there, but they're not that kind of energy. So yeah, I think it's a balance. And then there's a real preference from person to person.
I think that's really interesting, Anna, what you're saying. And I like the way you talked about sort of behaviors and characteristics and all of that. I know for me that I was very good at doing. So I ran an A&E department. I had 2 small kids. My ex-husband was a church minister. I did things in the church. I was looking after my mother-in-law. I was very good at doing. And I got very busy doing. And so this idea of kind of superwoman and the cape, and you can do 10 things at one time and be thinking of 7 more, just because I have that capacity didn't mean it was good for me. So after my marriage ended and I was sort of looking at all the different sorts of stuff, what I realized a few things. One of them was most of my friends thought I was fine because I was so independent. But actually, that was kind of this lock away of didn't know how to ask for help, didn't know what help I needed. So there's a real disconnect in masculine and feminine because I was so used to doing. So then I started to look into this and I found it really, really interesting, I have to say. So what I found was I had a tendency to do things the hard way. So I would do and make it happen. And this energy of I need to make it happen. I don't like the word goals. So as a coach, half the coaching world or more talks about goal setting and habits. I don't like that because to me, that's very hard energy. It's difficult. I talk about intentions. What would you intend? So therefore, if I don't make the goal happen because life happens in the meantime, I don't kind of beat myself over the head. I go, well, my intention was to do this. I've got halfway there. So it allows me to give myself a little bit more grace in the meantime. But the biggest shift for me was when I started to ask myself a different question. So every time I come across an issue now, whether it is how to bake a cake or how to fix a problem with the car, I've had my house renovated, how to do that. My first question is always now, what's the easiest way to do this? So my brain goes looking for what's the easiest way. I didn't have that as a default. And when I look back and I think of the default, when I get really busy, I now stop, press this imaginary pause button and go, right, what am I missing? Because when I get busy, it's a default to avoid something and I make life harder. So I have now learned how I work in a different way. So I'm able to go, what I always felt was, but I'm really soft and I'm really sensitive and I'm really this. And that's not what people perceived me to be because of who I was in the world. So it's that for me now, what I would say my biggest shift in life in the last number of years has been I've become a softer version of me. And my friends would go, absolutely you have. And that's where when I look at masculine and feminine energy and I look at me and I see how I've changed when I understand it, I think, and now I feel energy. It's something that I notice with people. If somebody comes into my world and they're trying to make something happen, I can sense this energy sort of pushing and I decide, do I want to lean into that or do I want to step back because it's not the way I want to do something? Does that make sense? Just as a sort of a concept. But for me, that question, what's the easiest way to do it, has literally changed my world. You're muted, Gazala.
Am I okay now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So for myself, I grew up in a household where I had 5 brothers. Actually, one was my cousin, but because my auntie passed away, my mother adopted him as my brother. So I grew up with 5 boys in the house. I do have an older sister, but she was married when I was 6 years old. So growing up, I was playing football, doing all the tomboy sort of things, very, very much kind of influenced, masculine sort of influence in the household, because my mother also came from an army family, which were very, regiment and very strict with a lot of things, very dominant and very powerful, you could say. Yeah. So, she was a very dominant sort of person. But I think, it's important to have the 2 energies, the masculine and the feminine. And as entrepreneurs, I think you need to have, if you've got that masculine energy, you can have the confidence to speak in front of audiences or, do the things that we're doing now. I guess, that's not something that is generally seen as a feminine sort of role. So I guess, there's a balance of both, but I think maybe for myself, I've got more of a masculine energy than a feminine energy. But that doesn't mean that, biologically, as a woman, you do have empathy, you are a mother, you do have your periods, which, your body is the way that it is. We were created from a religious perspective, because I'm a Muslim matrimonial coach, from a religious perspective, there's the belief that there was Adam and Eve, and God created man and woman, and then there was different characteristics, you can say, or different energies that complement each other to make the relationship work. But over time, I think sometimes to be in a position or to get your voice heard, that dominant masculine sort of side of you has to kind of like kick in and do things. Now, quite interestingly, one of my students in my previous career said to me that I used to teach ESOL learners, so they was teaching them English as a second language. So these were people that were coming over to the UK from war-torn countries, having had really bad experiences in their countries, and looking to settle in the UK. Okay, so we were looking at getting them settled within the UK, getting them to learn English, maths, and all of the life skills as well. One of the things that they said was that there are certain professions that a woman cannot do in their country. For example, they said that they cannot become a judge. And I asked them the question, why can a female not become a judge in your country? And they said, because a woman is generally very emotional. She might see somebody who's maybe done a certain, crime, and might have that empathy towards them in terms of like, she might feel, oh, this is somebody's son, this is somebody's brother, this is somebody's father, maybe I need to be a little bit easier on him, so therefore these roles are not actually given to females. They're only allowed for males, like army, because that needs a lot of masculine energy. You might have to end somebody's life because of a certain situation, and maybe a female is just, maybe her heart might tremble, sort of killing somebody in a sort of war situation. So biologically we are quite different, and we are created in different ways. We have different emotions. A woman might hesitate in doing a certain thing, like I said, passing down a sentence, or maybe, having that gun in front of somebody to, end their life because they feel that they deserve that, or throwing a bomb on someone to sort of, I'm going a bit extreme now, but I'm just trying to give you the mindset of an individual that, why a woman would probably think twice, oh, how can you do that? That's not really right, but whereas a man would think, well, they deserve this, this is something that they really need. So that's my...
Sorry, Ghazala, can I just cut you off there for a second? I think there's a big difference between what you're saying and what actually masculine and feminine energy is. And sorry to cut you off. And what I mean by that is that this is very cultural when you talk about that. When you talk about how women are perceived in society and what they're capable of doing and not capable of doing, I feel like that perception is very culturally based on their perception of what a woman can and cannot do. Because I think, okay, I'll give you my reason why I'm saying that. We find women in the army in most countries around the world capable of doing exactly what the men are capable of doing in the same positions that the men are playing in. Even from an African perspective, and this is what I mean, like we have women in the army, we have women judges. There is nothing that women are not capable of doing that the man can do. And I think we need to be a bit careful about that, because we don't want to put stereotypes on a woman's capability or ability to do anything. So I'm just a bit wary about that. And I also want to just kind of say that on that topic, I think culture does matter, and I'm not dismissing. They have the right to believe whatever they want to believe. I think it is the very small minority in today's world that still believe a woman is not capable of certain things just because she's a woman.
I can add, because I know statistic. So I'm reading now a very interesting book, Beyond Mars and Venus. And John Gray told about two countries, Norway and India. And Norway is famous for being most gender neutral country. And so it means men, they pretend there is no difference between men and women. But in this typical women profession, there are still more women, like teachers. India, the country famous for being very strict about male and female roles, 50% of teachers are men. So it means automatically, just because we are animals, we choose something that can compensate what we are doing at home and what we are doing in our jobs. And a couple of you mentioned, as entrepreneur, as business owner, you have to appeal this male energy. And the good advice is to come home and find some activities that can compensate your female energy, and then you're in balance and then stress. Julie, I think you said about being stressed just because of this disbalancing.
Yeah, and very much, as Claire was saying as well, I've spent like 35 years in the corporate world as well. And I probably spent most of that adulthood, maybe not in the earlier days, but very sort of stressed, always on that treadmill of life, go, getting up early, spending 12 hours out the house, coming back in, having to do life stuff. And it's bloody hard work. And then as you get older, it gets harder because you're building up on all your stress and overwhelm from all those years, right? And if you don't address them, they manifest themselves in psychological and physical conditions. And this is what happens, and this is the first thing I teach my clients. It's about learning to, let's look at the stress and overwhelm, learning to breathe, learning to stop. Let's just slow down that doing, because what happens is we are manifesting in our subconscious mind, remember, not consciously, physical conditions as well as psychological. So, for example, when we start arthritis or autoimmune diseases and all these these are where we are not expressing ourselves. Our body is our subconscious mind, right? So it holds all our feelings and emotions. So if we don't address and rebalance our feminine and masculine energy, and we continue just to do, and not calm down and not start being, then we are not in balance, and then our body is out of balance. And like I said at the beginning, it's nothing to do whether you're a man or you're a woman. This is for all of us. We need to be present. We need to be calmer. And that is where we need to look at where we're putting our energies. If you're in a job or a business owner that's very, very stressful, which we've all been and are at times, it's about addressing that. So I never knew about all of this before I started doing all my training. And I don't pretend to be perfect at it. But what I do now is most mornings, I get up in the morning, I get up early, I do some exercise, I do some yoga, I do my meditation, so that before I've even started my day, I feel a little bit more at peace. And because I've calmed my mind down a little bit, it means I can tap into my intuition. So I'm getting more of my feminine side, because I was definitely way, way too masculine. And over the last year or so, I've addressed that. There's still a lot of work to be done, but I feel a lot more content because this is my first year all in on my business as well, so it's a big responsibility. But what I've learned is I quit my job in December 2022. I'm almost coming to the end of that first year, but I've noticed such a difference in myself, because I was very much, as Claire was saying, that harder kind of person, very well respected and liked, I believe, but quite hard. Whereas I would like to think I'm much more of a softer version of me. I need to soften a little bit more sometimes, I think, because I am very direct. And that's a good thing, but sometimes it isn't. So it's about getting that balance right. But if you can be at peace with yourself and know that you are the best version of yourself, I've done loads of work on myself now. And I feel comfortable in my own skin. I feel comfortable who I am. And that's what I teach my clients. It's about being who you want to be, the best version of who you want to be. And that doesn't happen by accident. That is learning to understand your traits. It's learning to understand your limiting beliefs and your past behaviours. It's about looking at, your childhood. It's about looking at what your attachments are. It's about understanding who you really are and where you need to make those adjustments. But if you're not aware of it, you're just going going to carry on bang, 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 bang in your life until bang, something will happen and your body will say, no,
I'm done. Yeah.
Anymore.
Yeah, and I really hear what you're saying with that, Julie. And you know what came to mind is this idea that, and I'm going back to you, Ksenia, at the very beginning, when you talked about I found that really interesting. You gave women a poll, you know, what do you want in a man? What does it look like? What does it translate to be? And I think there's still, we've talked about this before, there's this element of disappointed expectations. So if I meet someone and I want them to treat me with a little bit more kindness, and I expect them to do that without me actually letting them know, what does that mean for me? So I have an expectation that I haven't communicated, and they have no idea that they're disappointing me because they don't know that my expectation is there. So for me, when it looks at masculine and feminine, I feel that I have a responsibility to communicate what I would really love to have in my relationship, so that it's, you know, it's this partnership in such a way. Does this make sense? In such a way that if I meet somebody and they're very masculine and I can, you know, really connect with them, but I think, oh, I would just love it if you would just come and just put your arms around me, just because, for no other reason, just because, but they don't know that that's something I would like. So what came up for me was that idea. Have you heard of the 5 love language quiz by Gary Chapman? So I love that, and I use that with my clients for information about ourselves, but also if they do it with their partner, for information about their partner, by way of changing expectations, so that you know that somebody, so I might love to have physical touch, but my partner might prefer to have quality time. So they interpret something differently. And I think the masculine feminine energy has a lot to do with interpretation as well. So what do we enjoy? What do we like? What do we translate something to be? So the women that wanted the man to be compassionate and, you know, all of those things, do they communicate that? So masculine feminine energy can be communicated in words from one person to another to try and help to build that balance. Otherwise, how are we ever going to know about it? And you're reading that really good book. I'd love to know a little bit more about what does John Gray say about it, because I haven't read it yet. I am going to. It does sound fascinating. So fire on.
I can recommend, because it's, you know, something like the things, you know, it's again, I like psychology, I like science, I like system. My male side of me expects some system and structure. About 5 languages of love. You know, realistically, there is no scientific proof. It's his personal opinion. People like this idea about 5 languages of love, but, you know, from psychological.
It's information.
Yeah,
I look at it and I go, I don't think it's science. I think it's information gathering. And I think the more information we know about us, the more information we know about our partner. And actually, maybe we discover something doing that. Actually, I didn't realize I really like that. So I don't look at the science behind that. I look at what information does it give, because every bit of information we can use.
Okay, again, from this book about you mentioned hugs. Just put arms on me just because of any reason. I can explain to you why. Because in the moment, men hug us just without this special intent, just hugging. It's increase our oxytocin. And oxytocin is hormone of love. So in the moment, we feel his support just because of hugging us. We feel better, and, you know, it's increase of oxytocin, and it's connected with estrogen, so it's automatically increase our female energy. What is happening after it is another thing, but in this moment, you know, we have to explain to our men that we really physically need this hugging. So all women have this touch, or this language as touch me more.
Can I just say, I think it's really interesting about the 5 languages of love, with because I know when you talk about it's not scientific, but I think credit where credit is due. He has done a lot of research for over 30 years plus with his wife around this topic, and around the psychology of communication, sociology, and lots of other research. And I think, giving credit where credit is due, I think that's where the love language comes from. But again, to your point, to both of you, Claire and Ksenia, what you take of it is up to you, and what you translate it to mean. But I think it's also really important just to kind of highlight that, just going back to the topic of this conversation, like how does it affect our relationships? I think there is also, and I just want to put this out there, how it affects our relationship. Let's maybe talk about if there is an imbalance. How does it affect our relationship if we have not understood our feminine, masculine energy? How does it affect our relationship if there is an imbalance of masculine and feminine energy from both couples? Because I think a lot of listeners will wonder, okay, this is great, but what exactly does it have to do with my relationship? What do you think, Ghazala?
Yeah, I think, masculine and feminine energy has a lot to do with our relationships. It's about self-discovery, where we are in terms of, what sort of level of energy we have, but also what our partner has. And I really, appreciate what Ksenia was actually saying about the woman actually needing her partner to sort of, hold her, because that does release all these different hormones and chemicals, and a woman kind of like needs that, because she feels that she needs to be feeling protected, she feels that she's wanted. Some women might like that touch, depending on what attachment style they have, or which love language they connect to better. Some people really need that. And for the man to say, well, I'm here to hold you, I'm here to protect you, different roles. So, for me, I think it's about understanding your partner, understanding their needs, understanding what type they are. I mean, in certain cultures, it's very important that the male takes the lead, and he takes the role of the man, and he has got more characteristics and masculine hormones. He's got more of those testosterone, so that he can be the glue that holds the family together. Okay. Whereas the woman, yes, she does need that as well. Sometimes within our community in recent years, where more and more of the females are getting a really good education, they're more outspoken, they are getting to the positions even as judges. I've got relatives who are female and are judges in the UK, and they are holding really good positions. Sometimes that can be for a male, that they can feel a bit fearful of that as well, because a strong woman for some men can become a little bit overwhelming for them. They don't really they want to feel that they kind of like are in control, sort of thing. That's a cultural maybe thing, not necessarily, but some people get put off by that as well, that, who's wearing the trousers here, who's the man, who's the person who's supposed to be who's supposed to be taking the lead. And we are coming into a time where more and more women are independent. It's more about individualism. This is affecting the nuclear family, the who's doing what. It's affecting the households in terms of their roles and what they're doing. Finances that are coming into the house. If the female is earning more, can actually affect the man, because his manhood is being affected. Maybe that's a feminine, masculine thing here as well. So I think it just has to, I agree with you all about the balance, getting the balance right. Yes, you do need to, in today's day and age, there needs to be a balance of having some feminine hormonal thing and, energy, and some masculine energy as well. But I think when the female has too much of the masculine energy and the male has too much of the feminine energy, it's not very sexy for each party, if that makes sense.
I like what you said, and I agree with it, Ghazala. And what it got me thinking was, do you remember I said to you before that I feel like I've become a softer version of me? So going back to your direct question there, Anne, how does this translate to people in their relationships? When I reflect back, isn't hindsight a wonderful teacher? I reflect back and I think the version of me who had a lot more masculine energy with that drive and go and do and make and happen and all the rest of it, I would have become frustrated easier. I would have become resentful faster, because I would have thought, why is he not helping? Why is he not doing that? And I look back, and that is a lot of what I thought. And out of that resentment, then there would have been this disconnect that would have happened. So the real terms for me, and what's the impact of too much masculine energy in the world that I was in, for me, was that it generated a lot of negative emotions. It created the disconnect that happened because of how I saw the world and my role in it, and translated that into his role in it, and what he wasn't doing was sort of the stuff that came to be highlighted. So on a practical level, I would say that because I have understood this a bit more and increased my feminine side and gone, okay, so if I don't have to make things happen and I can allow creativity and flow, and I've become a softer version of me, I've become more patient. I've become more understanding of trying to communicate in a different way. There's lots of things that I've changed that I know will have a direct impact. And well, they have had a direct impact on all the relationship I have with I've got 2 boys. I want to teach them what does it mean to be healthy in a relationship, and all of those things. And I want them to be masculine when they grow up, but I want them to understand that there is a way to communicate, that there is a way to sit back and problem solve. And all of the stuff that I wish to goodness I'd learned when I was their age, because they're 12 and 14. It's taken me X amount of years to learn it now, but the direct impact on my relationship has been that, with that level of negative emotions. So the positive side now is my world is less negative. My internal state is less upset. It's less, what's the word I would say? It's less driven by things that don't serve me well.
I love that, Claire, and really resonates 100% as well. And it probably does with a lot of people that are listening, because, and this is the thing, when we talk about our feminine, masculine energy, until we put it into context, we don't really understand what it really, really means, do we? And everything you've just said, I'm just like, yeah, same as me. And it's interesting because when you start first talking about this, we're obviously talking about how it impacts relationships. But when I was training on this recently, it was like, well, okay, but how does that help me understanding my clients? How do I help my clients to understand it more? Because they're not necessarily going to sit there and do a questionnaire about, are you this, this, and this? Well, maybe they would. Maybe they would be interested in that. But it's about having the understanding about the balance, isn't it? So when I see a client now, I can look at them and go, oh, that Claire, she's not really very well balanced at the moment, is she? Because she's so doing. Maybe if I talk to her about, have you ever thought about looking at what you're doing in your life and getting a bit of balance? That's the way round it, isn't it? To understand, rather than start spouting about feminine and masculine, because people won't always be interested. But it's about giving more of an overview about life, isn't it?
I love the question. The question that I ask a lot that I think is really helpful is, does it serve me well? So when you say, looking at a client, Julie, and you see that they're very busy, a good question for that client is, well, is that serving you well? What does that translate to your internal world? And then that's the person that you bring to your relationship. So we're 100% responsible for ourselves. So you have 2 people in a relationship, regardless of the 2 people, but each person is 100% responsible for their part in this relationship. Absolutely. And because I just work with one person, if one person in a relationship comes to me and I help them to know what does that mean to be 100% responsible for their part, this is where the change happens, because when one person changes, the dynamics change. I've seen it, I've lived it, I know it. So it starts with us. I think we've all kind of realized that all the stuff, it starts with us. What can we do to help to improve the world we live in? Because our internal state is what we bring to every relationship we have.
And we're kind of coming to the end of this session now, but why don't we just go around the room then and just have a little, knowing what we all know and what we've discussed, do you think you are more feminine or masculine energy, and why? And is that something you need to address and change, or are you happy with who you are?
I start first. I think just because of business and all this stuff, I'm more man than woman, more male energy. But I did it unconscious, and after I read this book, now I understand that I was absolutely right. You can compensate it to wear more feminine, like high heels, makeup, dress, thinking about hair, thinking about how you look like, because all these things, if you like ourselves, if you go to a beautician, if you go to massage or something like else, automatically increase our female energy. So you can be a successful business owner how you want to, but to compensate, you have to do some activities to bring into the balance. And Claire said about stress, it's like an external stress and internal stress. External stress, what you cannot improve, but internal stress, it's what you can do with your hormone balance, male, female, and being softer, like you said. But if you feel comfortable being more man than woman, why not? It's important. It's how you feel in this situation, I think.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry.
Anne. No, go.
I think there's, just going back to my question as well of how it affects relationships, I think is a lack of communicating. Your own authentic style will affect your relationship. So if you're not turning up as who you really are rather than who you think your partner wants you to be, that will affect your relationship. And that's from a male perspective and a female perspective. Because sometimes we take the assumption that because I'm a man, my woman wants me to be super alpha male. Not necessarily. Communicate your own authentic self. And also, because I know some women, it's not necessarily my type of man, but who actually really value more feminine men. And that's okay. But it's all about the communication. And also from the other perspective, be your authentic self. Like, in answering your question, Julie, am I more feminine or am I more masculine? I'm definitely more feminine than masculine. I have some masculine traits in me that I love and I wouldn't change. I've worked a lot to become who I am today after all my, through my whole life experiences, my divorce, even before my divorce and all of that. But what I've realized and why I'm in such a better place in my relationship right now is that we have very good communication channels between us. Like I communicate, I find this lovely or I find this attractive when you do X, Y, and Z. And he also tells me the same thing. Now, here's the interesting thing. I have friends and family members who think I'm a bit submissive, and I put that in quote unquote because I hate that word because that's something I was told to be in my marriage and I didn't want to. But I don't think it's submissiveness. I think I play more of a traditional role according to how I was brought up. So I do, like, I'm happy to do more of the cleaning, the cooking, and all those kind of things. And I'm happy for him to do more of the things that I would view as masculine tasks and roles and jobs. But here's the thing, it all boils down to the communication and actually telling each other this rather than him expecting it of me or asking me to do something I don't really want to do. So I don't like doing dishes, for example. He does the dishes. I do the cooking. Happy times. I don't like doing this either. So it's not about I do all the female roles, he does all the male roles. Absolutely not. Communicate. What do you find attractive? What do you value? And then in terms of masculine and feminine traits from your partner, and also communicate what is authentic to you. So it's nothing is being forced upon you and you have to like act like a circus monkey trying to do things that don't align with who you are, what you want to do, but you still feel like, oh, the expectations are there on me and so I have to do it. Like, no, just keep it authentic, keep it open, let the conversation flow.
Yes, I really like that. I think it's important to be authentic and just be yourself, really. And as I said to you earlier, I grew up with a lot of male in the household. So I would say that I'm quite masculine in terms of my way of thinking, my mindset and stuff. But when I'm around my husband, I think his way of because he's quite strong, masculine figure, I think it brings out my feminine side as well. So I think we work quite well in that way. And yes, each relationship is different. Everybody's different, but I think it's important to just be who you are. And I think my husband actually likes that I'm quite a strong Muslim woman and I can speak my mind and I can do things. Maybe he finds that quite sexy and maybe that's where we really connected. Whereas some men might find that quite fearful and quite intimidating, that, oh my God, she's, they might feel that she's a strong woman and I can't really handle this. She needs to be in a certain way. He finds that quite attractive. He finds that really sexy. So it was what works for you, really. So that's my take on that.
Yep, I think I've said enough for everyone to figure out my take on it. But I will say that I firmly believe that we cannot change what we're not aware of. So I am very aware that my default is to raise my masculine energy. And I hold that as an awareness because sometimes it serves me well, as you said, because then you rightly so, in a business, you need the drive, you need the energy, you need to make things happen. And that is that sort of, there's like a forward moving energy. But equally, I love having the balance because I can sense the softer version of me and I quite like it. I just never knew that it wasn't there. In my head, it was always there, but the outworking wasn't. I know. The smiling, yeah.
No, red lipstick.
Oh, okay.
Yes, red lipstick. It's really little.
Red lipstick. The lipstick I wear is like a bronzy color. I've never worn bright red lipstick. I might try that and I'll come back and explain what it was like.
Yes.
I've got red on today.
So for me, it's like have the awareness, and I'm totally about authenticity. And there are so many people that a whole other topic is walking on eggshells. That's a whole other topic when it's really hard to be authentic. But life, when we learn to explore about ourselves, is really quite interesting, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is. It's good how we get the next topic at the end of our conversation. Write that one down, Claire. So, yeah, for me, a bit like Claire, I think you probably already know, but very much was dominant. Like, well, I said dominant. I suppose I probably always have been. In my first marriage, I was the breadwinner. In my second marriage, I was the breadwinner. Not so much now, but you kind of, I don't know if I chose those roles, whether those roles chose me. But when you end up being in like the caring role, as I am, as a therapist and coach, one of the things you do is you get busy being busy, and you get busy not necessarily looking at yourself because you're too busy serving and helping everybody else. That's why there's so many therapists that need help, right? Doesn't mean they're not a bad therapist. It just means that they're too avoidant at looking at themselves. Whereas I deem myself to be one of the sanest therapists I know. And that's because I've done a lot of work on myself, right? So it's about really trying to understand what is going on for you. And I am work in progress. I don't think anyone is ever the full-blown finished article anyway. But I am aware now of my feminine and masculine energy and getting that balance right. And that's what we want to all understand, really. We are work in progress. Every day is a school day. We should all be investing in ourselves, looking after ourselves, and being the best version that we can be, so that we get the best version, and so do our families. And as you said earlier, Claire, about your sons, I feel the same. It's about bringing your children up to be the best versions of themselves as well, teaching them that there are both sides to life. You know, you do need both. You need a little bit of masculine. If I didn't have that drive and determination, I wouldn't be where I am now. But equally, I need to make sure that I always address the other side as well. So that is my work in progress, to making sure that I am balanced. And that's what we want to be doing in our lives, in our relationships, and just generally, if we want to have a better life, that's what we need to do. So on that bombshell, I think we need to leave it there. And what's our next topic going to be, Claire? Did you say it's going to be?
Yeah, we're going to go talking about walking on eggshells. What on earth is that? I don't think there's a human on the planet that doesn't know what that feels like. So we can unpack that one. So it's a very universal topic, male and female.
Very universal, yeah. So
I love that.
We would love you to watch our other videos that we've done as well. We're going to share with you where you can find those after we've recorded this one for you. So anything else, ladies? Or are you okay to call it a day?
Yeah, I just want to say as well, if anyone enjoyed listening to this, as Julie said, watch previous episodes. We're also going to put our social media tags on the show notes. Do give us a follow on our journeys individually, and share the podcast if you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Share it.
Bye.
Bye.